Hi, I'm Canadian golf sensation Kieran Harris, and today I'm coming to you from a field near my house. We're going to tell you about one of the biggest mistakes golfers make, and we're going to show you a very easy way to avoid this mistakes to help you make better contact, hit straighter shots with almost every single club. Here's the mistake. Here's one of the biggest swing killers I see with players, and it all has to do with that lead wrist and how it operates in the swing, okay? And especially this operation right here, which we call extension, when that lead wrist goes into that position right there. Some of you call it cupping, right? There's a few reasons why this is one of the most popular and one of the most deadly moves in golf, and we're gonna show you how to get away from that very, very quickly. Now, the risk of doing this, right? So if you look at this club face that I'm presenting here, right? I'm gonna put that lead wrist into extension, and what you can see is how the club face has now opened, or I've twisted the shaft open, or the face open to the shaft, right? So most players are doing something like that in the backswing. They're sort of rolling that form and extending that lead wrist. It creates this open club face that they now have to figure out how to reorganize as they come back down into impact. And when you're doing that with something like a driver, which you're moving it faster than every other club, and now we're trying to fix a face that's aimed way over there, in the late stages of the downswing, when we're moving at extremely high speeds, that's very hard to do, and in fact, improbable to think that we could do that on a regular basis with some success. As soon as we do that sort of move in the backswing, that extension, I get it, it feels comfortable, right? And a lot of players are doing that. As soon as we're doing that, we've now created a conflict. We've now created a problem that we have to solve that's not just hitting a golf ball and hitting it towards a target. It's, we got to fix a club face that's now organized very poorly to our target. It's not to say that it can't work, because a lot of players are doing this. It requires a lot more manual effort and timing on the way down in the swing, in the hands, in the left hand, in both hands, to try to fix that club face. So every now and then you can hit a good shot. I would say maybe 1 in 20 or so, but it's a hard way to live. So that wrist angle is one that keeps me up at night. It keeps me in business. It really is probably one of the biggest parts of my conversations with all players on the range, because it puts their club face in a bad position, and the club face determines where the ball starts for the most part in the air. So if you can't control the club face very well, you don't know where the ball's starting, you don't know where the ball's going, you're losing a lot of balls, you're missing a lot of greens, you're having a tough time playing golf. So obviously, we're talking about this extended wrist, right? And what we're gonna try to get more towards is, I would say, a flatter wrist, or for a lot of players, they're probably gonna need to feel like that wrist is actually a little bit flexed to try to get that club face to actually feel closed. It may not be closed, but if players have been prone to this pattern for so long, where they've been extending that lead wrist and flinging the club face open, well, that pattern, if it's pretty baked in, it's probably gonna need to feel quite different to create some change. And so feeling like that wrist is now flexed can start to organize the club face better, stabilize that club face throughout the whole swing, so it's not flying open and flying shut, it's staying more stable back and forth. And it sort of ensures that the club face and the sweet spot is starting to look at the ball earlier in the stages of the downswing as it comes into impact. The club face isn't looking way over there as it's trying to go towards the ball. It's now organized, and you can really step on the gas and go towards that ball with a lot of confidence. That's one of the reasons that wrist move is deadly. But there's a second really important reason of why that causes not only a bad club face, but some bad contact and other bad reactions, right? So if you watch here, right? So here's my flat wrist with the club, right? If I go into that extension move, right? If I actually pull my knuckles up, which is what I'm doing when I'm extending my wrist, my knuckles are coming more, if I was in a golf posture, they'd be coming more towards my chin. You can also see that the club is moving up. I'm lifting the club up off the ground. I'm raising the arc depth off the ground, okay? So this becomes a bit more relevant when we get to something like a short pitch shot, okay? Because players who have this pattern of how that lead wrist moves and extends will often do it with every single club in the bag. So now imagine I do this on a short 10-yard shot, okay? 10, 20-yard pitch shot, okay? So I've got into the backswing, and as soon as I've gone into the backswing, I've opened the face, and because the knuckles have come up, I've raised the club, the arc depth, off the ground, right? So if I maintained that position into impact, I'm gonna come down with a face that's open and a club that's probably not gonna interact with the ground. So I might thin the ball, right? I might get one of those laser thins. I could shank it. I could miss it altogether, kind of top it. And it's not gonna go towards my target. In fact, here's a down the line view of a little chip shot, right? So here's the ball, here's the club, right? And the player who goes into that extended look early, right? And here I'm not even really moving my arms, I'm just moving my wrist, right? So you can see how much the club face is opened, but you can also see how quickly when I open the club face, the club lifts off the ground, right? So now on a very short backswing, I have to reorganize that club face and get the arc depth back down to ground level. And usually that stuff is what causes chunks, shanks, thins, a whole host of stuff that we don't want, right? Rather than the player who has a more neutral wrist and therefore a more neutral face and can come back and strike the ball pretty darn well. A player who does this in the short game, right? And again, I mean, this is the occasional player who might make this work, right? With a very handsy sort of timing type move, but I don't think you could ever find a coach who's gonna recommend that or prescribe that as a stable technique, right? Players who do that, they have to do a lot of fixing as they come into the ball. They have to fix the club face, right? They have to get out of extension and back into, you know, sort of a flat wrist or a little bit of flexion to get the club face more organized. But they also have to now sort of have a motion where they have to actually throw the club into the ground, right? Because they've raised the arc depth, now their brain goes, oh shoot, that could miss the ball. And then there's a force and a motion that pushes the club down into the ground. And that, again, this is a 10 or 20 yard shot, right? This is a short backswing, and you're trying to accomplish a list of things very quickly in a short amount of time and space. Sounds pretty hard to do, right? And that's where players can get really screwed up in the short game. So just like I was using a driver as an example there to say, hey, this extended wrist creates that open club face, that sort of killer. Well, it's also a killer down to these very short shots as well. So what do we want to see from those players, right? I'd like to see a much more neutral wrist condition as they go back. If you want to hit a higher shot with the wedge, then you can simply twist that club open on the ground and then take your grip on it. And that will still allow you to produce a pretty neutral wrist while maintaining an open face, right? You don't have to change the wrist angles to create an open face. You can. Doing it artificially like that, though, is the stuff that we're talking about here that gets players into this huge trouble with direction and contact. And man, is it ever a killer in the short game. So that look right there, right? Again, that's the one that I say keeps me up at night. That's the one that I see all the time. That's the difference between the pros and the Joes, right? The Joes are all here. We're trying to get more there, but in order to get there, you might have to feel like that, right? If you've done it one way for so long, you probably got to go to the other side of the spectrum to find that middle, to meet in the middle. But be very conscious of that. So whether it's a driver, whether it's a 7-iron, or certainly whether it's a little pitch shot around the green, if you're noticing that the knuckles are coming up, right, which is raising the club off the ground and which is also opening the club face dramatically relative to your target, you're going to struggle with direction and you're going to struggle with contact. So let's try to aspire to a little more of the flat wrist in that swing, right? A little less of that. We're going to try to get there, and we might have to feel that to do it. Go give it a try. I swear, if I walked up and down a driving range and I gave everyone that tip, all of them are going to play better golf, okay? And you will too. Give it a try. Let me know how it goes. Have some fun. Enjoy the golf.